Hello everyone, welcome to my channel SW Metro official channel.
Janelle's ledger proved they robbed the family to pay Robyn's debt, and for years fans of Sister Wives speculated about where the money was going, why the once financially savvy Brown family seemed to be slipping further and further into debt, and how Robyn's presence in the family shifted the financial balance in such a drastic and destructive way. But now, with Janelle's meticulous record-keeping in cold, hard numbers laid out on paper, the truth is harder to deny than ever, because the numbers don't lie, and they paint a damning picture of how funds that were supposed to be set aside for the collective, money that Janelle, Christine, and even Mary worked tirelessly to save, contribute, and maintain, were instead funneled away from shared family goals like building on Kody Pass, maintaining homes for the older kids, or providing a fair safety net for everyone, and were instead redirected, almost stealthily, to cover Robyn's lingering personal debts from before she even joined the family, debts that Kody seemingly made his personal crusade to eliminate at the expense of everyone else, thereby prioritizing Robyn's financial baggage over the stability and long-term dreams of the other wives and their children. And this revelation reframes so much of the tension fans have seen play out over the years, because while arguments often revolved around control, communication, or favoritism, the root issue was always tied to money. And Janelle, known as the most practical, even-tempered, and financially astute of the wives, kept track of the figures not to attack, but to maintain clarity in a household where chaos was constant. So when she finally revealed her ledger, documenting deposits, withdrawals, earmarked funds, and unexplained diversions, it became clear that Robyn's supposed fresh start with Kody wasn't a fresh start at all, but rather a restructuring of the family's collective resources to absorb her personal financial baggage. And this is why Christine's complaints about being neglected in favor of Robyn carried so much weight, why Mary often felt abandoned, and why Janelle herself grew weary after years of trying to budget for kids, housing, groceries, and future investments while watching the accounts bleed into obligations that didn't belong to her, her kids, or even the family as a whole, but were strictly tied to Robyn's past, including credit card balances, store debts, and even loans connected to her previous marriage, all of which suddenly became family priorities because Kody insisted that everything Robyn brought into the marriage had to be fully honored and supported, even if it meant destabilizing the family's own foundation, which had been so carefully built by Janelle's discipline and Christine's sacrifices during the early years in Lehigh and Las Vegas, when they were all pulling together just to make ends meet. And so the betrayal here isn't just financial but also deeply emotional, because while polygamy is supposed to be about equal partnership, shared sacrifice, and collective gain, the numbers in Janelle's ledger prove that equality was a facade, that the collective only functioned as long as it served Kody's preferred wife, that sacrifice was unevenly distributed with Janelle and Christine carrying far more of the financial load, and that collective gain was sabotaged by Robyn's drain on the system. And one can only imagine the fury, heartbreak, and frustration that bubbled under the surface. For years as Janelle bit her tongue, Christine voiced her growing discontent, and Mary slowly disconnected, all while Kody preached about unity but acted with blatant favoritism that the ledger now quantifies in undeniable black and white. And when fans look back at the endless arguments about why the family couldn't move forward on Kody Pass, why Janelle had to struggle with rental homes, why Christine often had to make do with less, the answer has always been hidden in plain sight, masked by Kody's explanations and Robyn's tears. But now the math exposes the manipulation. Money was siphoned off, and debts that belonged to one woman became the burden of many, which is why so many fans feel that Janelle's act of revealing the ledger is not just about bookkeeping but about reclaiming truth. Because numbers are objective, they don't bend to Kody's narratives, they don't play favorites, and they don't get swayed by emotional pleas. They simply expose the reality that Robyn's entrance into the family marked the beginning of a financial implosion that could have been prevented if honesty, fairness, and boundaries had been maintained. And the tragic irony is that Janelle, the wife most loyal to the idea of financial partnership, the wife who often said she was committed to the family dream even when her personal marriage with Kody was strained, is the one who now has to show everyone that the dream was sabotaged from within, and that the real reason the Brown family empire crumbled wasn't just about jealousy, incompatibility, or shifting values, but about a fundamental breach of financial trust, because once you see that family funds were diverted without transparency to pay debts that had nothing to do with the group, you understand why resentment grew like wildfire, why Christine finally walked away, why Mary withdrew, why even Janelle herself, ever the soldier, began to distance herself from Kody, because no matter how strong the emotional bonds or religious convictions, money is the foundation of stability, and when that foundation is cracked by favoritism and misuse, everything built upon it eventually collapses, which is why fans now see Robyn's sob story in a new light, because her narrative of being the victim who just wanted to be included crumbles under the evidence that she was not only included but prioritized, and that inclusion came at the literal expense of everyone else, and Janelle's ledger is the smoking gun in this saga, the document that proves what the other wives long suspected, what viewers speculated about, and what Kody and Robyn have long denied, that the Brown family was robbed from within, not by outsiders, not by circumstance, but by the very people who claim to care the most about family unity, and if anything, the heartbreak here is amplified by the fact that it was preventable. Because Janelle's financial strategies had always been sound, the wives had worked through poverty before, they had built businesses, invested smartly, and found ways to support over a dozen children on limited income, but that entire machine was derailed when fairness gave way to favoritism, when Robyn's past became everyone's present, and when Kody chose to prioritize one woman's financial baggage over the shared future of the family. So now, with the ledger exposed, fans, critics, and even former family members alike are left to grapple with the question of whether the sister wives experiment was doomed from the start or whether it was sabotaged by a series of choices that put personal preference over collective responsibility, and while opinions will always differ, the numbers speak with chilling clarity. Money that should have gone to family progress was stolen to pay Robyn's debts, and in the end, that financial betrayal may be the most devastating betrayal of all, because it didn't just rob the Browns of money, it robbed them of trust, unity, dreams, and ultimately, the very foundation that polygamy was supposed to be built on. Janelle's own accounts paints a far more sinister picture, that of a systematic financial diversion, a familial heist orchestrated by Kody and executed to service the debt and sustain the lifestyle of his favored, fourth wife, Robyn Brown. Janelle, the family's longtime budget keeper and de facto CFO, ultimately found herself holding the pieces of a broken financial system, and her ledger didn't just show poor money management, it proved they were robbed to pay Robyn's debt. The financial anatomy of the Brown family was uniquely suited for such an exploitation. For years, the family operated on a communal pot. All income from TLC, individual businesses, and other ventures flowed into a single account, from which expenses for all four households were theoretically paid. Janelle, pragmatic and mathematically minded, was the natural guardian of this pot. She understood cash flow, budgets, and long-term planning. Conversely, Mary, Christine, and Janelle herself often spoke of scraping by, foregoing wants and often needs, living in modest homes and carefully considering every expenditure. This was the established order, until Robyn arrived in 2010. Robyn entered the family carrying significant pre-existing debt, which she has admitted included credit card debt, jewelry debt, and a mysterious victim debt from a previous business venture. The fundamental, unspoken rule from day one was that upon marriage, this debt became family debt. The collective pot, built on the backs of the other wives' contributions and the shared TLC income, was now responsible for cleaning Robyn's financial slate. This is where Janelle's ledger becomes the central piece of evidence. The proof is not in a single, glaring line item that reads Robyn's debt payment, but in the glaring disparities it inevitably revealed. Janelle has repeatedly stated that after Robyn joined the family, the money seemed to vanish. The communal pot, which had once sustained 4 households with some struggle, was now struggling to sustain 5, despite the family's income skyrocketing with the success of their reality show. The math simply didn't add up. Janelle, the keeper of the numbers, would have seen the outflow. She would have seen the regular payments to unknown creditors, the constant drain that coincided not with a family-wide increase in spending, but with the acquisition of a new wife with a documented history of financial irresponsibility. Her ledger would have shown the truth. Money was being siphoned from the accounts meant for groceries, utilities, and mortgages for Christine, Janelle, and Mary, and redirected to service the liabilities Robyn brought into the union. The most potent and tangible symbol of this financial redistribution is the infamous Brown family homes in Flagstaff. The move to Arizona was a financial catastrophe, masterminded by Kody and unquestionably supported by Robyn, who desired to follow her eldest son to college there. To facilitate this move, the family had to sell their homes in Las Vegas. However, Christine, Janelle, and Mary were all in a position of positive equity. They could sell their homes, pay off their mortgages, and have a substantial down payment for new ones. Robyn, however, was not. She and Kody had purchased $1 million home in Las Vegas with virtually no down payment, leaving them with a massive mortgage and no equity to extract. The Las Vegas sales became a zero-sum game. The profits from the homes of the first 3 wives were pooled back into the communal pot. This money was then used not equally, but prioritistically. A huge chunk was used for the down payment on Robyn's $890,000 dream home in Flagstaff, complete with its infamous safe room and vast property. Meanwhile, Christine was left renting. Janelle bought a small RV to avoid pouring money into rent, and Mary, despite her consistent income from her LuLaRoe business and the B&B she purchased alone, was also relegated.